Hello, my name's Michael Conneely, and this is the second webinar in the series How to Read the Vedic Birth Chart. Let me say a bit about the course which this webinar is part of. Basically, we're working through the charts of a study group within the Master Vedic Astrology course. And a principle of my Vedic Astrology course is that if you want to do Western astrology crossover, you can. So you'll be seeing a bit about that as we go through this webinar. Another important principle of my course is that it generates the superb perception that Vedic astrology offers, but it also seeks to apply it. We don't just churn out perception, because that can actually be disempowering. So we link the wonderful perception of Vedic astrology, with Western astrology added in, indeed, to healing modalities. So typical of a healing modality would be emotional freedom technique. There's body code, emotion code. These are all available worldwide, and they're detailed in the Master Vedic Astrology website and in my readings website, and you can see the address of that on the screen, starwheelastrology.com. And we also use other techniques, so that if something is thrown up that could do with embodiment, then you have the opportunity to embody that state of being. And if you wish to move from maybe a wounded or challenged state of being to a more healed and empowered state of being, then again we can embody that. Also, art therapy can be used. It can be very helpful to sort of draw where you're at when you're in a difficult period, and then draw the you that you would like to be as a result of dealing with and learning through and transcending the difficult period, empowering yourself, drawing that empowered self. And one of our study group is actually a most accomplished illustrator. And of course, very traditionally, another method of applying the perceptions of Vedic astrology is mantra. And mantra is wonderful for stabilizing the mind. And so, of course, we also deal with that. Okay, I'm going to talk about the chart of a second member for 50 minutes, and then there'll be an opportunity for questions. And then my partner, Maggie Pashley, is going to demonstrate the application of a healing technique. And then there'll be a further opportunity for any questions and discussion. Now, just to say that if needed, people attending this, there's a chat button top left. If you move your pointer top left, there's a little blue box which says chat. And to look at this again and review the material, well, the video will be published and a link will be made available. Okay, so without further ado, let's look at the charts of Lisa, who is the subject of this second webinar, How to Read the Vedic Birth Chart. And because I always cross over, if needed, into Western astrology, we see Lisa's Western charts too. And of course, I have a Western astrology course, the enlightenedastrologycourse.com, and that has the opportunity for crossover into Vedic astrology. So let's, without further ado, look at Lisa's charts. So now you should be able to see the charts. I hope you can. Can you see them all right? Okay, so the display starts with Lisa's Vedic birth chart, the Rashi chart, and we'll be focusing on that a lot. So I'm not going to talk about that in this introductory phase. Beneath that is a statement of Lisa's planets in signs. Beneath that, Lisa's planets in nakshatras. They are the wonderful lunar zodiac of Vedic astrology, the 27 nakshatras, awesomely powerful gateways to hidden wisdom, to ancient wisdom. They can be understood anecdotally, almost novelistically, as wonderful portrayals of a person. And yet, beyond that, they have unfathomably deep spiritual message. So carrying on down, Lisa's Navamsha, her ninth harmonic, her soul or marriage chart. And we will be looking at that at her request and cross-correlating it to her Rashi or birth chart to see what blessings and messages, challenges and gifts her soul is sending her this lifetime from the Navamsha to the Rashi. There's a wonderful system of how the planets are indicators of aspects of our destiny, and we'll be looking at those. The next chart is her, I'm just going to make it a bit smaller, her Western astrology birth chart. This is the AstroCalc version, a wonderful chart system in my opinion. Now, I want to put on record a few reactions to this Western chart before we go into the Vedic, because I feel Lisa has a very subtle and magical healer chart, and some of that is so well depicted by the Western astrology, which includes the outer planets Uranus, Neptune and Pluto, that when they were discovered came into the human consciousness, and also Chiron, the wounded healer. So note that Lisa has a grand trine, a very special talent. Note that she has two talent triangles, this one here and this one here, indicators of special talents. And note that she has two kites. So here the spine of the kite is Chiron opposite Pluto, and you can see there's a kite shape around the spine, and the spine of the other kite is Venus opposite the moon. And these augment fantastically the message of the Vedic birth chart. So if we just briefly decode these talents, well, Chiron gives her very special healing abilities. Chiron trine the moon, Chiron trine Neptune, where Neptune is trine the moon. Sensitive, psychic, imaginative. And yet the ability to direct the work she does with that, because the spine of the kite people can be very directed. But notice also how fated Lisa's life is. Rahu, the north node here, is opposite, obviously, the south node, but also Jupiter, Uranus. So, a lot of fated incarnational work to be done. And then we look at the second talent triangle, Neptune, trine Chiron, where Chiron is sextile Venus and Venus is sextile Neptune. And of course, that's the top part of the kite, going down to the bottom of the kite, the moon. So Venus opposite the moon, at one level, it's tremendously loving and sympathetic, although in theory it can be sort of a bit lazy or indulgent. And yet Venus has got this exalted contact with Neptune, a concept of the ideal, romantic, sensitive. But Venus is also aspect in Chiron, the wounded healer, the ability to heal through loving gift. And yet the moon, notice, is in the 8th house, which is a difficult house, the house of death and rebirth, the shamanic house where we go into the depths and find the empowerment and treasure buried therein. And the moon is challenged because it's the apex of a T-square. So you've got Saturn opposite Mars, where both of them square the moon. Now, Saturn opposite Mars is a tough energy where either Saturn puts blocks to Mars' assertion or Mars pits itself against Saturn's lessons and demands for patience and learning. And the tension of that always discharges into the moon. And notice how that moon is ever so unsupported. There aren't planets really either side of it. I have an unsupported moon, and I'm pretty sure from memory the study group has other people with unsupported moon. And so the unsupported moon means a challenge to the preservation of mental equilibrium, of meditative focus and balance. Certainly calls for things like mantra. But I have to say that this is a rectified chart. We don't know Lisa's time of birth. So this ascendant at 4 Western Sagittarius could be wrong. The ascendant was established by kinesiology, by muscle testing. So the thing is, whenever you have a rectified time of birth, well, you can try to rectify it by seeing if a particular time correctly predicts big life events at the time they happened. You can see if a rectified time of birth depicts the right sort of characteristics, personality attributes. And of course, you can use the wonderful divisional charts of Vedic astrology for refining and refining. And they go to the D60 chart, the 60th harmonic chart ultimately. And so it is a challenge that people on astrology courses have to rectify through the course if necessary, and to be open and prepared to do that. I remember I had one student who just couldn't face going on when her mother revealed the time of birth she'd been given was wrong. And so, you don't need that reaction. In fact, you learn an awful lot by the process of rectifying, by the process of adjustment. Let's go on to Lisa's Huber style chart, the psychodynamic astrology. I don't think I would want to add much. This is the radix or natal chart. It's a wonderful system, and we'll be using extrapolations of it in a moment, but that is Lisa's Huber style radix. But basically, the Huber school, which I trained with, has a wonderful system of the psychodynamic meaning of chart aspect shapes. So here we have Lisa's grand trine, also known as a large talent triangle, her 2 kites, which I've mentioned, the T-square or the achievement triangle, which I've mentioned. And then, yes, look at this one, the cradle. The thing about Lisa is that she'll always want to find a cradle in life. But that is an illusion, because it's not facing her real life. And indeed, look at the position of that cradle. It's going to tip her out. So that's a big, useful thing to see. But the Swiss Huber School is wonderfully good on nature versus nurture issues. Are we the result of our nature or our nurture? And so the radix is deemed to be the chart of nature, where the house chart, where the houses of equal size is the chart of our nurture, the effect of our earliest upbringing. So you can see, typical actually of many, many people who come to me for readings and courses, a big imbalance in cardinality, quite an imbalance in fire. And here is the house chart of nurture, the effect of earliest environment. Whoops. And let me get to it again. And notice how actually it's more like the astrocult charts. The kites have appeared, and they weren't in the radix. So that's very interesting. And obviously, and Lisa is starting the Western crossover this week, and so she'll be covering all these things. And here's a wonderful statement of the chart aspect shapes in the house chart, produced by her earliest upbringing, the righteousness rectangle, the two kites, for example. So, oh, yes, and here's her 7 rays linking her radix chart, if it's for the right time of birth, to the 7 rays system that came down from Alexandrian Egypt through medieval Drury and Alice Bailey. So she's wonderfully attuned to love and wisdom, devotion and idealism, and a bit of the trying to achieve harmony through conflict. And I've got that. I'm always trying to achieve harmony, and I use nagging and conflict, and no one appreciates it. And I can't think why. And there we have this issue of will and power as the key ray. Okay, let's start. Having looked at that Western astrology, because remember my courses and readings always have the crossover, let's go to the Vedic birth chart. Okay, if the time of birth is right, we have, and I'll make it a bit bigger, we have Lisa's ascendant or Lagna in Scorpio. Now, what does that mean? Well, I remember in one textbook it says obtaining through seducing or investigating, but we assume it's normally investigating. A focus on the unknown. It's devoted, supporting and nourishing of friends. It resurrects and repairs broken people. It's deeply spiritual, highly intuitive, shrewd, inspirational, innately talented, and works well by instinct. But unfavorably, there's a critical, possessive, vengeful streak until one learns to face one's shadow and transcend it, to manage one's mind. And I talked about methods of that. It can be controlling, it can be punishing, it can overwork, worry, and have a grim outlook. Can take patients as partners and become victimized in love. Can get intimate too quickly, can expect others to understand them, perhaps too much. Now remember that Vedic astrology has the wonderful 27 lunar signs, the nakshatras. Now, if the time of birth is right, Lisa's ascendant is in Anuradha lunar sign, where Saturn is transiting at the moment. Saturn is at 4 Scorpio at the moment, so it's heading towards Lisa's ascendant. And so, in fact, Saturn is in her 12th house, which is a difficult time, a time when things die. And she'll be going through all that if this time of birth is right. So what's Anuradha about? Well, the power of animal is the female deer, and they're outwardly buoyant and fun-loving, attractive, hearty, and popular. They're spiritual seekers, interested in ancient knowledge, capacity for astrology, devoted. Said to benefit more if they live away from their place of birth. Unfavorable, they can try too hard to get enlightened. They can be obstructed by envious people. Personally, I think the issue of being, driven away from one's focus, distracted, is big for Anuradhas. So that's a depiction of Lisa's ascendant. Okay, the biggest planet in the Vedic birth chart is the moon. So here we see the unsupported moon in the fallen and difficult 8th house. So what's the 8th house about? Well, positively, it's about transcendental emotions. Positively, it's the lotus that flowers out of the mud at the bottom of the pool. It is the researcher, the healer, can gain money through things, weird ways like wills and insurance settlements and so forth. it requires a lot of control of mind, and so you'd be looking at mantra and yoga and things like that. So especially those. Let's look at the sign is Gemini, so that is quite a very communicative, charming person, young-looking and humorous, fluent. Can appear superficial, but I'm sure Lisa never does. Can be vain, I'm sure not. Flirtatious, a rapid talker. Can flit from one thing to another, so we have the focus issue. Can be too questioning. Question, never go to the roots, but I'm sure Lisa's learned all that. Now the nakshatra, the lunar sign, is Punarvasu. The ruling deity is Aditi, the mother goddess, and it's a wonderful deity. Philosophical, religious, spiritual and likable, charming and forgiving, idealistic, honest and truthful to the core, valuing her family and home. So Aditi, the goddess of abundance, rules her life. So it can be a good writer and an inspiring speaker. And they work to rid their life of impurities and encumbrances so as to spiritually blossom. In fact, there's a bit of a problem that their simple and genuine approach for life and their fun-loving, etc., people can say they lack the mental capacity they have, but that's not true. Okay, well, let's go to the sun. Now, the sun is in Scorpio, which obviously is very intuitive and competitive, spirited and passionate. Scorpio is ruled by Mars. So it has a strong will and can take leadership, control. It's investigative and skillful. But negatively, it can be too controlling and militant and too blunt, and can tend to have crises and illnesses. It can be too fiery, so the fire needs to be cooled and understood. And of course, if the time of birth is right, it's in the first house, and that can be a problem. It can be too me first, and that can be destructive to partnership. It can be too bossy or over-directing. But favorably, it is authoritative and likes to help others and do the right thing. And when we look at the Vedic lunar sign, we have Jyesta. Jyesta, sun at 22 Scorpio. And Jyestas are very conscious of holding a position of seniority. They're protective and responsible. They like to be the leader of their family or their group or their class or their movement. They have intuitive, psychic and occult potential, profundity. But they can, in their wanting to lead, tend to override feelings. The power animal is powerful. It's the stag. So they sort of take charge of the family, the extended family. So saying that they can act responsible, but maybe not be quite so sort of ethical and all that underneath. So they may like to look good, and that can really hurt, family members if that is indeed the case. That's one of the negatives. I'd like to mention Venus, because Venus, I feel, is a big issue in Lisa's chart. So Venus, if we look at the planets in signs, is at 4 Capricorn. And if we look at the nakshatras, is in Uttarashada nakshatra. Now this is tricky for Venus. Partly because Uttarashada is ruled by the sun, and we've already said that Lisa's sun is in the first house, and we've looked at that. Now, Venus is sort of love, beauty, charm, and all that sort of thing. Sorry, I'm just getting back to the chart. But it can be too maybe assertive, or even sort of burned by being ruled by the sun. Remember, Venus and the sun are not friends, naturally. And the other thing about Uttarashada Nakshatra is that it has no natural mate, so it is invincible, righteous and responsible, with great stamina and consistency. Its power animal is the male mongoose, but it is not a relationship nakshatra. That doesn't mean to say that people with planets in Uttarashada don't have relationships, but it can be a challenge. What else would I want to say? Oh yes, Venus is in Capricorn, and Capricorn is ruled by Saturn, and Venus and Saturn really get on. They're friends, but only when they learn each other's lesson. In other words, that love in its highest form needs commitment, needs structure. And so Venus in Capricorn is dutiful and constant, loyal and responsible. Can be helpful to the poor and the underdog. And remember, Lisa has many healing Chiron aspects and abilities. But it can be a little bit cold or unfeeling, unless, of course, it learns about that possibility and avoids it. And it's in the third house. Well, actually, that's very creative. And I want to say that Lisa's Mars, here we see it at 23 Virgo, is actually in Chitra lunar sign, the 14th nakshatra. And that is all about creativity. It's ruled by Vishvakarma, the heavenly architect. And it's quite temperamental. The power animal is the female tiger. So we have Lisa's Mars in the temperamental sign of Chitra, so it would perhaps be best not to upset her, and I'll be careful what I say. But she's so creative. And of course, Chitra itself is ruled by Mars. So, of course, she'd be very good, for example, at yoga and martial arts and all that sort of thing, no doubt. Especially as her moon is unsupported. Let's look a bit closer at the moon. Moon is highlighted in the Navamsha chart. It's Vargotama. In other words, assuming the time of birth is correct, Moon is in the same sign in her Navamsha chart as in her Rashi or birth chart. It is a bit sensitive to time of birth because the Moon is at 28 degrees. So if she was born much later, her Moon would be in the 9th. But actually, I do feel it fits the 8th very well so far in the course. And indeed, her Moon is in the 9th, in the Navamsha, which is wonderful and spiritual, orientated to Dharma and finding the good gurus. Lisa's asked me to look a bit at her Navamsha. Now, of course, we can't look in any detail, because it's a topic on its own. We study the Navamsha in the level 1 Master Vedic Astrology course, and also in the level 3 course, where particularly we go into the Rashi Turya system, for example, where we map the Navamsha, the soul chart, the relation chart, into the birth chart. I've actually prepared a document which I'll email to Lisa, where I've done this. So let me just try and describe the soul message from Lisa's Navamsha, from her previous life or lives into this life. So her moon is Vargotama. It sends blessings. So in the middle of the hard learning of her unsupported moon in the 8th, she's getting constant blessings all through her life, making the shamanic realization really spiritual. But now her ascendant, as we've said, is in Scorpio in the Rashi chart, but look here, it's in Libra, if the time of birth is right, in the Navamsha. It's moved 12 signs, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And in fact, Lisa has 3 planets that move 12 signs between Navamsha and Rashi. They are Ascendant, Mars, and Saturn. So that is a very special message. Moving 12 signs isn't easy. It can be hard to understand the qualities because you see it's attuned to what's beyond this world. The 12th house is where we go beyond this world into spiritual institutions, into moksha, salvation. Or it can, of course, be loss. And indeed, 12th house people have to learn not to waste their energy, not to be unfocused. If you live with a 12th house person, they can be very untidy and unfocused. And they may not even understand the manifestation of their qualities. And that applies to 3 of Lisa's, as it were, planets, Ascendant, Mars, and Saturn. Now, the nodes of her moon are 8th house from Navamsha to Rashi. So in her birth chart, if we'll be looking at this, she has Rahu in Pisces in the 5th in the birth chart. But here we have, let me get this right. I'm sorry. Yes, you can't. Let me show it to you. So there's Rahu in the birth chart in Pisces. Let's go now to the Navamsha. Rahu is in Libra in the Navamsha. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Ketu 2 therefore moves 8 signs. Now remember that Rahu and Ketu are the indicators of your incarnational destiny. So to have them in 8th house relationship from Navamsha to Rashi is tough. It's Ashtamsha. It brings sudden events into the life, shocking insights, big changes, unexpected. That is her destiny working. And so the trick is obviously to generate the right perception, control the mind, so as to learn the true meaning, the letting go of the sudden change. Her life, no doubt, will be very susceptible to being cracked open, especially during Rahu Ketu predictive periods, the dashas and bhuktis of Vedic astrology. And talking of which, Lisa is in Ketu Dasha now, Ketu predictive period from, if the time of birth is right, March 2011 to March 2018. And within that, she's in Jupiter sub-period, Jupiter Bhukti, so she's in Ketu Jupiter from February 2015 till January 2016. Now, okay, what's Jupiter add to that very spiritual period? Well, husband issues will be highlighted. Jupiter is husband in a woman's chart. But also it's very imaginative, spiritual, psychic. Very good for astrology. And she's studying Vedic astrology. She's just started the Western crossover, where her Western astrology in particular is so psychic and healing. So she's at a very important period, K2 Jupiter, and no doubt handling it very well. Yes, Jupiter. Let's look at Jupiter. Jupiter in the birth chart is here, conjunct the South Node in Virgo. In her soul chart, Jupiter is dead opposite in Pisces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And that in itself brings sudden events. It isn't easy to have your Navamsha planet exactly opposite a birth chart. It can be destabilized. You can always be balancing up and could drive the other people mad. You can lose your own essence and your stability. And so in her case, it's about guru and husband issues. But I do need to say now, Jupiter is on the nodal axis. Rahu, the north node, is the indicator of our incarnational destiny. Ketu, the south node, is our past, our karmas coming in, where we start from. We're driven to manifest the qualities of Rahu, and it can be quite dysfunctional until we learn to understand not to be driven and to purify. Rahu can be surrounded with lots of illusion, but Ketu blows away the smoke of illusion. And Lisa has quite a fated life because she's got Saturn, Lord of Karma, Jupiter and Mars on the nodal axis. Let's go into decoding that a little bit. We've got time, I think. Yes, notice that Ketu actually sends an aspect of Venus, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So Ketu not only aspects Venus, the planet of love, Ketu aspects Jupiter, the planet of husband in a woman's chart. Ketu to Venus can bring past life karmas of rejection, with the risk of rejecting first so you don't get hurt. Well, that's obviously you will, but I mean, it's a bit of a, people like to try, and often with Ketu Venus, it brings rejection scripts. It's so helpful to know that and not do it, to work with the partner. And Ketu Jupiter brings, again, challenges with husband. We'll be coming to that. But let's look at Rahu in Pisces in the 5th house. Well, the 5th house is about children and creativity, so these issues will be very important for Lisa. Remember, we've already established that she has a lot of creativity in her chart. Mars in Chitra. And So she'll be impelled to manifest issues of creativity and children issues, fated children issues in this life. So what else could I say? Well, let's look at opposite it, Ketu in Virgo. So we had Rahu in Pisces, which is, very mystical and psychic. We have Ketu in Virgo, which is all about service, health, healing, and right living. So, of course, we have an intuitive healer who is impelled to push her energies, Rahu in Pisces, push her energies into the intuitive, the psychic. But who has to balance that up with right living, Ketu in Virgo, yet Ketu is spiritual and melts down what isn't. So of course it brings the spiritual dimension to health, healing and right living. It's a wonderful statement of incarnational destiny. Not easy, because Rahu is conjunct Saturn here in the 5th house Pisces, which can be implacable and can mean that indeed implacability is unfortunately asserted on oneself. So you have to be careful not to sort of overdo regime. Ketu in Virgo here is said to be a past life which was over material, and this binds the soul in this life. And so balancing it up with the spiritual, the visionary, astrology, and so forth is why she's here. So Ketu conjunct Jupiter. So, this can be, a very spiritual agenda with husband, can marry a man that's somehow unusual for his culture, a non-traditional relationship, unfinished business brought into this life from past life concerning partnership, extreme sensitivity to rejection, even if your partner isn't rejecting you, and Jupiter's the eldest son, so karmic relationship with your eldest son. Past life connections drawing you to philosophy and perhaps many spiritual faiths and guru. Ketu and Mars, Ketu conjunct Mars, said to bring in issues from past life of anger, violence and courage, an experience of new beginnings. So fear of violence could even have been in war or bloodshed in a previous life, prone on a negative level to rage. But good for technical abilities, which of course are very relevant to someone who's into healing and, as it were, mind control through yoga and mantra. I always say, Ketu Mars, beware the loss of men in your life, in women's charts. So I've whizzed through an interpretation of the Vedic birth chart, looking first at relevant crossover into Western astrology. I'm just wondering if there's anything else I would wish to say about the Vedic birth chart. Yes, there is one thing, predictive periods. I always feel that the predictive period you were born into is very significant, and if the time of birth is right, Lisa was born into Jupiter Venus. So that immediately sets at one level I'm not quite sure what a clockwork setting off on issues of husband and love, but also of course all the other features of Jupiter and Venus. And so at age 6, on this time of birth, Lisa went into the very different, restrictive, hard-learning Saturn dasha. Can be very good for success, but does demand patience and hard work. And then in March 2011, she went into her present Ketu dasha. And in March 2018, she goes into Venus dasha. So I thought I'd just mention the Vedic predictive periods. So let's maybe try and pull things together a bit, if that's all right. First of all, we have a very unsupported moon in a difficult 8th house, which does definitely mean difficult mother scripts. and the potential for the moon to be very unstable. But the moon is Vargotama. It's in the same sign in the Navamsha chart as it is in the Rashi for this time of birth. So endless blessings. And she'll make a spiritual path of stabilization of mind and a shamanic turning of darkness into light. I feel that Lisa incarnated with definite scripts around love and husband. I feel that she is a healer. When we looked at the Western chart, we saw wonderful indications of psychic and loving healing abilities, very directed manifestation and development of those. And in my opinion, she has healer's nodes of the moon, incarnational destiny, Pisces and Ketu here. So, and she's very creative. So, I think I ought to stop talking now. We're just coming up to 50 minutes, and I'm going to go away from sharing the charts and ask if there are any questions. Now, as I understand it, people would have to unmute themselves if they wanted to ask a question. So we're talking, the questions would be arising from the charts we've analyzed. And this is the second exercise that this group is doing. It's the second of several Vedic chart analyses. How do I analyze the Vedic birth chart? Are there any questions? And we're building up to demonstrating the relevance of a healing technique, maybe around one of those core summary issues. So does anyone want to make any points? And I think they have to unmute themselves to speak. Right, so there's a problem with people unmuting themselves. How can I alter that? Let me try. Oh dear, it doesn't seem to want. Cameraman, let's try that. So I could see if I can unmute people that way. Okay, can anyone speak now? Can you unmute yourselves? Can I unmute? Oh dear, we seem to be stuck on muted. I don't quite know why that is. Would anyone like to send a question by chat? Right. So it seems that we can't unmute anyone. No? Is Louise unmuted?
Hello.
Can you speak, Louise?
Hello, can you hear me?
Very faintly.
I'll try speaking up a little bit. Is that better?
It's still incredibly faint.
No, I don't know.
Oh, Maggie can hear you. For some reason, you're very faint with me. Did you have any point or question, Louise?
No questions. I enjoyed it. I especially liked your analysis of Rahu and Ketu because it's the same nodal axis as me. So. Yeah, that was.
And of course, you are our resident artist healer of the future.
Yeah, I'm getting there.
I think in view of this unexpected, like, sort of technical block, which we will fathom for next time, we've been doing very well with the techniques so far tonight. Probably the only way you can speak, Maggie, is to take over this laptop. And do you have in mind like a healing modality you might like to demonstrate? And do you have in mind, quite possibly or not, demonstrate it in relation to any of those key summary issues? No, I can't hear you. So let me hand over to you now. Okay. So with any luck, here you are. I'll have to take over that.
Hello. Hiya. So let me just see. I'm going to see if I can unmute myself here. Showing broadcast. Profile. Showing broadcast. Okay. I'm going to see if that's done the trick for me. So I'm going to go back and see if that's worked. Right, I'm going to see if that's worked. No, that's So, okay, what I think I'll do then, we had hoped that we would have Lisa to comment on how well what Michael said fitted her, and especially what particular issues she felt that she was working with currently, and therefore I was going to do some EFT, which is tapping on acupressure points around that. Now, because Lisa has had internet issues and can't join, and is watching this actually, but can't join in actively. I was just going to ask Michael if he might, in non-astrological terms, summarize what you might think are the issues that the astrology points to for Lisa.
It depends what's current, but clearly issues of balancing the mind and balancing healing work with marriage.
Right, okay. So what Michael summarized there is one of her issues seems to be balancing healing work with marriage. So I'm just going to assume that might be an issue, and just some EFT on that, and anybody else listening is welcome to tap along and even say the same words, because there's something curious that happens with EFT, is that when we tap on somebody else's issues, we actually benefit and help clear our own issues, even if they seem to be different, and it's what Gary Craig, the developer of EFT, referred to as borrowing benefits. I'm just going to invite you to tap along with this. And the first part, so the EFT sequence starts tapping on the side of the hand in what we call the karate chop point. And that's where we say a statement that sums up what's an issue for us. So I'm going to take, even though it's just so difficult to balance all the interests that I have and all the things that I want to do, all the healing work I want to do with being married. And I really completely love and accept myself, even though it's so difficult to achieve a balance in my life, a balance between all the passions for the things that I know I'm good at, things like yoga and astrology, and there's just so much to explore. And then there's this man who wants my attention, who needs my attention. There's this man that I want to be with. And sometimes it just feels all too much. And I deeply and completely accept myself, even though it's just sometimes so difficult fitting it all in, knowing how to be. I know there's a way. I'm open to there being a way. So, and now we're just going to go round these different points, beginning with the top of the head, and we're just lightly tapping. Oh, sometimes it's so difficult. It's so difficult at times. I focus on my work. I just love the yoga. Love the meditation. Just get so much out of those classes. And then there's astrology. There's the astrology, and that's just so fascinating. It's just so fascinating. And I'm good at it. And I love doing it. People tell me I'm really, really good at it. And it's so wonderful. And I can get so absorbed by it. That sometimes I forget. Sorry, I realised the video's shaking as I've got the laptop on my lap, and as I'm tapping, it's shaking the laptop a bit, so I hope you're not feeling too seasick watching this. Sometimes I forget about this wonderful man that I really want to be with. Sometimes I forget, and sometimes I just get so absorbed that I don't give enough time. I don't give enough focus to my relationship. Or maybe I'll go the other way. Maybe sometimes I go the other way. Maybe I get so absorbed in the relationship that I lose focus with my work. And sometimes it's just so difficult finding that balance. So what we do with EFT, we say what the problem is, and we tap on it. And that's a good place to begin, because it's been real, it's been present with what's actually happening right now. And once we've done that, and once we've come to a place of greater peace with that, then we can begin to bring in other opportunities for change, opportunities for healing, opportunity for seeing things differently. So I'm just going to do that now. And so even though I have found, and sometimes it's good to change the tense, because you know, we may have found something difficult, but we might now be ready to see something, different possibilities, things that we didn't see previously. So even though I have found it difficult at times to, sorry, I was just distracted because you're on live now. As mega passionate. Anyway, never mind. So even though I have found it difficult at times to achieve this balance, and it's been tough. and it's been distracting. I've got much more clarity into this pattern. Got much more clarity, and with clarity and awareness comes the possibility of change. And even though I have struggled with this in the past, I'm now willing to see this pattern clearly and to see choices that are there that I didn't see before. Even though this has been a problem, change is on its way. It has been a problem, balancing love and work, balancing relationship and career. And sometimes I'd go in one direction and forget about the other direction. And I wasn't aware of what was happening. But I have awareness now. And I have choices. And I wonder what I could choose differently. I wonder how I could achieve that balance. I wonder if I could have some sort of I don't know what I would say, some sort of trigger that goes off when I see that I'm getting out of balance, that makes me, so if I'm so absorbed in work, and work is just so fascinating, I have something that's like a little reminder that goes off in me that says, am I getting too intense here? Am I getting too intense? Am I forgetting something? How does this fit in with my life? How does this fit in with my relationship? And making adjustments and making changes so that I can have the best of both. I can have a relationship that I really enjoy, and I can have work that I really enjoy. And they don't fight each other anymore. In fact, they can be friendly to each other. And I wonder what that will look like. I wonder what that can look like when I can see my relationship as supporting my career. And I can see ways in which my career can support my relationship. I wonder what that would look like. And I'm open to going with that. I'm open to seeing what that can do. I'm open to change. And I'm open to believing that I can have both. And I can enjoy both. So that's just a little taster, really. So I just invite you to play with that. And what can happen when we do EFT? We can uncover a layer underneath what we originally tapped on. And if we uncover the underlying layer, then we can that's what we tap on. So and as we tap, it's like we are clearing away all the ways in which we've limited ourselves, any way in which we have thought that things could only be that way, and we're connecting more and more with the fullness of who we can be. So on that note, I'm going to hand you back to Michael, and he can round up this session. And I'm sorry that the technicalities of, first of all, hiding everybody led to us not knowing how to unhide people. So I'll hand you back to Michael.
So, hello, and I always find EFT so renewing and gets me out of my rut, and it's so empowering and it frees me up. So I'm a great fan of EFT. But if you look at this website or the Master Vedic Astrology website, you'll see other modalities which can be linked to the perceptions offered by astrology. And as I said, this is a series of webinars happening every fortnight. And the initial focus, as we work through all the members of this particular study group, is how to read the Vedic chart. And then it goes on to techniques endlessly. And in a fortnight's time, Louise will be interpreting Rebecca's chart. And we may well also look at a crossover into applied astrology. As Louise is the most wonderful artist, truly, truly wonderful, it may well be that drawing oneself in some challenging facet of one's life and then drawing oneself wonderfully resurrected how one wants to be could be the healing component which would follow on from the chart analysis which Louise will be doing for us. So I'll be emailing to Lisa the script I had for the little tiny tour of her Vedic chart, and also the analysis of how her Navamsha or her soul chart speaks to, challenges and blesses her Rashi chart. And all members of the study group will be able to listen to this, to review the material, and to send me any questions. You can post them in the Facebook group, which I go on twice a week, or you can email them to me. And if you do put a post in the Facebook group, that's very good because it involves the other members, and send me an email telling me it's there and I won't miss it. So, a wonderful demonstration, despite technical difficulties, of the awesome power of Vedic astrology, of the huge potential of integrating into it the best in Western astrology, psychodynamic astrology, evolutionary astrology, and integrating into it the application, applied astrology of healing modalities. So thank you, all of you.